Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Family Devotions. I'm so glad to see you today. I hope your Monday is going well and that you will have a good week this week. As you can see, and as you know, it's a rainy day today, and we often don't like rainy days. They aren't as enjoyable, we think, as those beautiful, sunny, warm days that we've been enjoying lately. But we know how important rainy days are, don't we? Without rainy days, our plants wouldn't grow, the earth wouldn't be watered, our water reserves wouldn't be refilled, and life would be far more difficult and eventually impossible. We need rainy days, but we don't like them very much. And the same could be said for those spiritual rainy days that we have in our lives, those days of adversity, those days when we are confronted with challenges and problems and hardship that we did not expect or did not want. I'm thinking about that today because yesterday afternoon I was privileged to be in that Zoom meeting and presentation with Chris Singleton. I shared with you in my sermon yesterday about Chris and his story. Chris Singleton was 19 years old when his mother, his beloved mother, was gunned down in the prayer meeting at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston. And Chris's father had died years earlier, and suddenly he found himself the lone head of household of himself and two younger siblings, and he had to try to pick up the pieces of their family life and take care of them and somehow deal with the horrific actions of that white supremacist gunman who took the lives of so many people in that church. And yesterday, Chris, oh my goodness, I wish you all could have been there. His story was so inspiring. It was out of that experience that Chris coined the term, love is greater than hate. And he was the first person to forgive the gunman, to dig deep into his faith to be able to do those things. And he shared a beautiful story about how his faith has grown since that time and how he's now traveling the country sharing that beautiful story of God's steadfast love, of the power of forgiveness, and of the ways that love is stronger than hate. But he shared this verse of scripture with us that had a very powerful part of his story. It's Proverbs 24, verse 10. And the Karen Easter-Bayne version of that is, if you fall apart in the face of adversity, how little is your faith, or your faith is too little. And Chris shared with us how that particular verse of scripture kept showing up in his life in the months and weeks leading up to that horrific day in June 2015 when his mother was brutally murdered. And it became the cornerstone of his faith after that day. If you fall apart in the face of adversity, Proverbs says, your faith is too little. And what he talked about yesterday was the rainy days of our lives, and how each one of those days, those times that we define as problems, as challenges, as hardships, that God can use those to continue to build our faith and our trust in God, so that when we need it most, when we have a day like Chris Singleton had, hopefully never, but when we face the hardest days of our lives, we have a stronghold, a reservoir, a grounding in faith and trust in God that will see us through. And so I want to suggest today that we can be thankful for rainy days. Not only the rain that nourishes the earth and brings life to plants and trees and flowers and food, and not only the rain that replenishes the reservoirs of water that sustain all life, but we can also be thankful for the rainy days in our lives, those days that cause us to turn to God, to look for help, to call on our trust in God to see us through. Because every time we do that, we know that we are building a reservoir of faith that we will need on our very hardest, rainiest days. That's a sign of God's love for us, that God is always there for us, always providing a way through, always giving us the help and the strength and the guidance we need to make it through our rainy days. Thanks be to God. I'll see you soon.